We are back on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk, 1180, 1230, KGEO, 1410, KERI, now in Albuquerque, New Mexico on 1000 KKIM, and also 3 times a week on the Internet nationwide at knookmedia.com. We have a great guest on the phone, the Sheriff of Pinal County, Sheriff Babeu.
Hey, before you go on, first off, it's not 3 times a week.
Thanks for having me.
It's not 3 times a week anymore, Marty. This is Mexifornia. It's uno, dos, tres.
or as Arnold Schwarzenegger would say, California.
California.
Sheriff, I want to start off talking about a little letter you sent to Washington. You want to tell us about that letter?
Absolutely. Well, I very clearly sent it off after Vice President Biden said that they're not opposed to using executive power and authority and to infringe Second Amendment rights and freedoms, our liberties that are enshrined and protected in our Constitution, also in the Bill of Rights, the right to bear arms. And Arizona is a huge Second Amendment state, and we'll defend that with our lives. And so I sent a letter out to President Obama advising him that not only it's ill-guided, that if in fact he does that it shall not be enforced, because he's circumvented Congress, he's circumvented our Constitution, and he's deliberately attacking core rights of the people, our rights to bear arms, to protect from what is appearing more and more to be the power grab of this federal government that our founding fathers had, thank God, knew all too well and wanted to protect, safeguard against. And so I said, look, there are more people that are killed by impaired driving in the United States every year than by any guns. So what are you going to do? Make cars illegal? Make driving illegal? And it's obvious that this president will stop at nothing. There's 20,000 plus laws, rules, regulations throughout the land that restrict in some fashion weapons or gun ownership or certain weapons and magazine size and bullets, rounds. And so adding any additional restrictions only applies to law-abiding citizens. And it does not apply to those criminals that we run into every day. It doesn't matter what law you create. That's why we call them criminals, is because they break laws. And those are the people we have to fear. So it should be about consequences and penalties for the action, not for the rights that are enshrined in our Constitution. So I said, if you do this, and you come with your federal agents to Arizona, that we shall not only not enforce it, but I have supported state laws here in Arizona that if in fact they try to carry out these unconstitutional executive orders, that we should arrest federal agents.
Are you planning on doing that if that happens?
If that happens, absolutely.
Do you think it'll end up in court?
I don't think it'll happen, because there was such an outcry. See, Obama's doing this piecemeal, step by step, only so much that the people will tolerate, right? And so he's doing this while so many different issues are facing our great nation, that he's doing this to chip away at the fabric of our country. And this is why we have to be alert and vigilant to it, and why guys, not just like me, I'm following in the proud footsteps of so many patriots and men and women today, even like both of you, who stand up and are not afraid to speak out and to tell it like it is, and to say, this has got to stop. We need to put our country, our families, our people first for once, and not these other countries. That the generosity of our nation is so well documented throughout time, and that we need to have leaders that represent us.
You know, he said he was going to fundamentally change America, and he has been doing it. This has been one of the problems that we all face. He's lied to everybody, and he is changing America. He's making us all become more like communist.
Well, it's a sad state of affairs, and this is why I've advised candidates for governor out here, Christine Jones, and I've said on national TV that we have to invoke the 10th Amendment, which talks about states' rights, that in the Constitution it specifically says that any right that is not articulated, that is specifically given to the federal government, falls to the states. And keep in mind, those 50 stars on our flag represent the states. Where on that flag represents the federal government. There isn't.
Good
You know,
point.
the 13 stripes represent the original colonies, and this is the United States. And this is where we have to exert our authority, our power that's in the Constitution, and start taking charge and authority for our own safety and for our own welfare in the absence of federal action.
Good point. We're having a conversation with the Sheriff of Pinal County, Sheriff Babeu.
And as it says, under God, not under Allah, under God.
That's right.
Sheriff, I want to talk to you about what's going on in Texas. I love Governor Perry's attitude, you know, taking the 1,000 National Guard troops and bringing them to the border. What do you think about that idea?
I fully support it. Governor Perry is doing what's best, not just for his state, but he's an example to governors across America that use their legitimate power and authority. Because our National Guard, which in Arizona we have over 5,000 Army Guard and over 2,200 airmen, that many, 90% of us, and I count myself among them, I'm now a retired major, are combat veterans. And put them to work for what I believe and most Americans would support, a far more unique and legitimate purpose for our National Guard: protect our own country, defend and guard our own border. You know, we have today 28,600 active duty soldiers on the DMZ and Korea. That war was in the 50s. And we still have 28,600 there as we're speaking right now, guarding, protecting, and defending their border. Why can't we have not just 1,000 in Texas, but 1,000 in Arizona and 1,000 in California and New Mexico, protecting, guarding our border, and not be called racist and not be called and accused of militarizing our border?
Well, what can they do? According to what I've read, that they can do actually nothing, except maybe just by being there, they detour people from coming across the border. That's about it.
And that's far more significant as what you'd initially believe. And I'm going to ask both of you to consider this information, because when I was in Yuma and I was the commanding officer, we had 700 active duty soldiers and airmen. Now, we placed them 3 or 5 soldiers in one position, not 10 miles from the border, directly on the border. So an armed, uniformed presence of our military with the military vehicle, and then to the left limit and to the right limit, direct line of sight, a quarter mile, is another 3 to 5 soldiers. And then beyond them is another 3 to 5 in each direction. So you build this virtual human curtain that is armed military. The situation that we're in now, Mexicans, drug cartels, Central Americans have grown to disrespect our federal agents, our Border Patrol, because they have been ineffective because there's no consequences. So they're looked at as small cops. But in their countries, and they're heroes, by the way, and I always support our Border Patrol, they've been undermined by this president. And in Mexico and Central America, they fear their military. It's part of their culture. Here, they all know and see the United States and our military as the most powerful military force in the world. So that presence acts as such a significant deterrent. And I can speak to this with authority because I was the commanding officer there, and that's how we deployed our service members directly on the border. And I would troop the line, which means I'd come up to you and say, Sergeant, what's going on? The sergeant would say Major B, because they couldn't pronounce Babeu. They say, Major B, we've been here for 3 weeks and we haven't seen a soul, thinking that they've failed. And I would chuckle, and I said, that's exactly what we want.
Yeah, exactly.
And the reason being is because these people don't want to be observed, they don't want to be caught, they don't want to be stopped. And that's why this will work.
Yeah. Sheriff, in the last couple of minutes we have, you've had some problems with the Arizona Republic, and I'm just curious, why? Why would you have problems with them?
Because they're a liberal trash rag.
How do you really feel about them? Come out of your shell.
and because what they have advocated time and again is they have cheered on the president and his federal power grab of the executive office, which must be stopped. And they have cheered on open borders, and they have cheered on the fact, this whole thought that the 90,000 unaccompanied juveniles come October, that were cruel and heartless if we just don't welcome them into our communities. And, we've got enough homeless veterans. We've got enough poor in our own country. It's time we start taking care of them. So I reject and refuse to be shouted down by the likes of this president or his czars or his advocates in the liberal media.
I think I have found that the best sheriffs in this country come out of Arizona.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'm inclined to agree with you. Sheriff, we're almost out of time. Please come back. We would love to have you come back.
I'd be honored to. Thanks both of you for standing up for our country.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you for the same.
We'll be back in a moment. We'll be back in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk 1180.